Good morning, everyone. The Senate Judiciary Committee will come to order. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We're not quite all present yet, but it's a very busy time of year in the legislature as we are approaching the last day for non-exempt committees to be meeting. So we did start working a bill yesterday that I want to conclude our work on before we have the hearings on the two Kansas Court of Appeals nominees. So as soon as we get one more member present, we can start our business on working House Bill 2126 that we heard yesterday. So we're going to be working House Bill 2126. Mr. Reviser, if you could just give us the quick bill brief again now that we have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, committee. Jason Thompson with the Reviser of Statutes. I'm pulling up my bill brief. 1 second. All right, as you'll recall from yesterday, House Bill 2126, as amended by the House Committee, is the bill that provides immunity from civil liability for COVID-19 claims for certain covered facilities, and that would include adult care homes, community mental health centers, crisis intervention centers, community service providers, and community developmental disability organizations. And I can go into further detail as needed.
Sure. Committee, any questions? Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Any questions for the reviser on House Bill 2126 that we heard and began working yesterday? Yes, Senator Gossage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did have a question that occurred to me yesterday, and that is, in talking with some folks who are in these facilities, their concern is maybe something was handled improperly at the nursing home to which they might be able to file suit, but they felt like they would just say, oh, well, you know, it was due to COVID. Could you address that? Is there anything in this bill that would address that?
Go ahead, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jason Thompson again with the Reviser. I think about the only thing I can say is that, you know, that would be part of the litigation. You would still have to prove that it was a claim for damages, losses, et cetera, relating to exposure or potential exposure to COVID-19. That's the definition of COVID-19 claim that is in the bill. So if your claim is related to that, they would be able to claim immunity from that if they met the criteria of the bill, that they had the proper, well, I want to use the exact wording, sorry. If they were in substantial compliance with public health directives applicable to the activity that caused that action. And so it would be litigated on the basis of those definitions.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. And that kind of leads into a thought I had on the bill as well, that when we change from an affirmative defense to immune from liability, the facility would still be subject to suit and wouldn't have the protection of the immunity unless the facility was in substantial compliance with public health directives, and which they would have to then show to get the immunity. So I think there's a misperception out there that this would provide complete protection for the nursing home facilities from even getting sued. So that's not what this bill does. It just provides some additional protection that if the facility is complying with those public health directives, they have some immunity from lawsuit proceeding against them once it's already filed. You still have to show you were in substantial compliance, though. So with that, do we have other questions for the reviser? Seeing none, then any discussion on the bill? Yes, Senator Corson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I don't want to belabor this because I know we have a packed schedule, and I think folks are pretty familiar with this. I'm going to be opposing this just for the simple reason that I think these immunity bills are unnecessary. I think our courts are very well equipped at litigating and handling negligence claims. There are negligence claims brought every day in courts all across Kansas, all across the country. I think judges, juries are familiar with dealing with negligence claims. And so again, I just think they're unnecessary, and I do worry about this making it much, much harder for people who believe that they've suffered a legal wrong to have their day in court, to have their case heard before a jury of their peers. So I'm going to be opposing the bill, and that's my reasoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Wilborn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would like to reiterate that these folks would be already included if had not been vetoed by the governor the first time around. And part of a negotiating tool on the 2016 was the governor would not sign it unless these folks were out from under the immunity clause. So therefore, they've been thrown under the bus from day one. So with that, Madam Chairman, I would like to move House Bill 2126 as amended out favorably.
Thank you, Senator. And we have Senator Baumgartner.
Yes, Madam Chair, I think it's our opportunity to right a wrong from last session, and so I second that motion.
Thank you, Senator Baumgartner. Any discussion on the motion? Thank you then. Committee, you have heard the motion that we pass out House Bill 2126 as amended by the House Committee favorably for passage. All in favor signify by aye. All opposed, nay. The motion passes. Thank you, Committee. We will now then turn to our next order of business, which is we have 2 confirmation hearings scheduled. So want to thank everyone for their attendance today. We have an hour and 20 minutes, and with the 2 confirmation hearings, I see we have on the schedule, there are only proponent conferees signed up, are the nominees themselves. So that helps me adjust the time that we have. And we'll want to keep the schedule that we had for some of our other confirmation hearings that the committee is familiar with. We go alphabetically by senator. If you aren't ready to go when your name comes up, you can pass and we'll come back to you. Let me take a few minutes to calculate the allotted time. With the committee's indulgence, we might run a few minutes past 12 o'clock. It just depends on how the questioning goes. But what we'll do is we will allow an opening statement by each appointee of 3 minutes. And I think you've had the opportunity to visit with the committee members one-on-one, which we have appreciated your time and effort doing that. So 3 minutes for opening statements. We'll then allow 3 minutes questioning from each senator with any time left at the end to circle back, and we will get through this as expeditiously and thoroughly as we can. So with that, we are going to start with our first appointee, which is Leslie Isherwood. So welcome, Ms. Isherwood. Please introduce yourself, and we'd enjoy hearing from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. First, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to those of you with whom I had the privilege of meeting prior to today's hearing. You were all remarkably gracious and considerate. I'm grateful for our discussions and to have had the chance to personally address any questions you had regarding my appointment. Those exchanges truly enhanced my appreciation for the demands placed upon each of you in honoring your commitment to the people of this state. When I think about what I would like this committee to reflect upon as it considers my intentions, qualifications,
and aptitude for this role, my starting point is consistently that I am a lifelong Kansan devoted to the strength of her home state. I was raised in Hutchinson, Kansas, and am the youngest of 4 children. My father was an Air Force veteran and an air traffic controller, and my mother operated a daycare business out of our home. Both are responsible for my passion for learning and my ability to empathize and sympathize with a wide variety of people is likewise attributable to my parents. I spread my wings a bit to attend college at Washburn University and opted to remain there when pursuing my law degree emerged as my next endeavor. It was during law school that my love for appellate practice was ignited, and it was a perfect fit for my affinity for research and writing. I excelled in the Moot Court Counsel program, and upon graduation was named to the Order of Barristers, an honor society of sorts for those committed to brief writing and oral advocacy. Following graduation, I relocated to Dodge City and practiced for a short time in a private civil firm focusing on workers' compensation and municipal prosecution. A position eventually became available in the appellate division of the Sedgwick County District Attorney's Office, and knowing that's where my talents and my heart were rooted, I seized upon and immersed myself in that opportunity to begin to serve the people of Kansas. I have remained with that office for the past 22 years, and during that time have worked exceedingly hard to become one of the most skilled appellate practitioners in our state. Throughout my career, between the 2 tiers of our appellate courts, I have filed in excess of 1,200 briefs and argued several hundred cases, spanning the full spectrum of complexity in criminal law, as well as habeas matters, child in need of care cases, and issues involving juvenile offenders. My positions have been consistently rigorously tested, and my analyses keenly scrutinized by the reviewing courts to ensure my claims always have a solid foundation in both fact and law. I believe it is important for the committee to know that the undercurrent of my practice has not simply been the refinement of my own skills and career. Rather, it is simply a portion of my larger dedication to and respect for appellate law as a whole. In furtherance of that calling, I have played an active role as an educator in several continuing legal education seminars specifically designed to assist other lawyers in becoming better appellate practitioners. Because it matters not which county those cases originate from, their resolution impacts the entire state. So it is imperative that we are all trained to the best of our abilities. Finally, I would like this committee to know that just as my dedication to the law transcends the boundaries of my own personal career, my commitment to the people of this state goes beyond my profession. When I am not engaged in the analysis of complex legal issues, my time is devoted to worthwhile causes in my community. It is my firmly held belief that we each bear a responsibility for creating strong communities which afford its members the opportunity to achieve their full potential. In pursuit of that ideal, I have helped to facilitate the development of a new library at St. Anthony's Family Shelter. I played an integral role in the creation of a literacy partnership with the Kansas Humane Society through adoption of the Read to Rover program, and have mentored disadvantaged women through the Dress for Success nonprofit organization in an effort to assist them in reclaiming their lives from abuse and addiction. My twin daughters, who will be 16 tomorrow, have worked alongside me during many of my service endeavors, because it is important to me that they be raised to embrace and exhibit a charitable spirit just as I was. It would be a remarkable honor to be entrusted with the responsibility to continue to serve the people of Kansas, now as a member of the appellate judiciary. If confirmed, the same dedication and commitment to excellence, which has been my North Star as a practitioner and public servant, will continue to guide me as a jurist for the Kansas Court of Appeals. I am happy to answer any questions the committee might have.
Thank you, Ms. Isherwood. That was about 5.5 minutes, so I thought it was important, though, to let you introduce yourself to the committee, and we'll make sure that Ms. Hurst gets that same opportunity as well. And I wanted to make clear for those following along online and the committee members that the two appointees that we have today are not appointees for the one same spot on the Court of Appeals. They are two separate positions on the Court of Appeals. So if it is the will of the committee to recommend them both, they could, or please treat them as separate appointees for separate positions on the court. Wanted to make sure we were clear about that. And I also wanted to clear up, I know the committee has been through confirmation hearings before, but for those who aren't familiar, I am going to reiterate that the business before the committee today is the consideration of the appointment by Governor Kelly of Leslie A. Isherwood as a judge of the Kansas Court of Appeals to serve subject to retention elections as set forth in statute, succeeding the Honorable Steve Lieben. So the statute provides at KSA 20-3020 that any vacancy of the Court of Appeals is filled by appointment of the governor and with the consent of the Senate. So that's what the hearing today is, to determine whether what the consent of the Senate is or isn't. So we are looking forward to the questions now from the committee. We will limit those to 3 minutes each as best we can, and we will then start with our alphabetical list with Senator Baumgardner.
Chair, I'll pass at this time and I'll go later on.
Sure, thank you. Then we will turn to Senator Bowers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. And first of all, thank you for visiting all of us that you could. I think that's very important that we could put a face to your resume. I think that's a very important first step, that with working with as a judicial branch, but also as with legislators too. So I was particularly interested in your comment about not only are you representing a district, but the entire state, that you feel like that, because that's what we feel as senators too. We're elected in our own districts, but are senators for the entire state. So that makes me feel good when I hear you say that. I don't have any other questions, but comments. I really appreciate your work with women and the youth. I think that's very important, that they have good role models, and that they can do, they want to become a judge, they can. They want to become a legislator, they can. That the world's open to them. So I do appreciate your work in that area.
Thank you, Senator.
Very much for being here.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. And committee members, do want to remind you that at your committee table there in front of you is a confidential confirmation hearing folder regarding Leslie Isherwood that has her confirmation questionnaire and things like that in it that you might want to refer to as we hear questions today, and make sure that you turn in that packet at the conclusion of today's hearing, because it is confidential information. With that, then, we will turn to Senator Corson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being before the committee. My question is just, you've obviously had such an accomplished career with the district attorney's office, and very well respected within the profession from the letters of recommendation that are in your packet. So, I mean, why take this turn now to become a judge? Kind of what motivated you to apply for this vacancy and sparked your interest in transitioning to the bench?
Sure. Leslie Isherwood. Sure. So the appellate judiciary has truly been the most comfortable intellectual environment for me. I really enjoy delving deeply into the issues and getting an understanding of the development of the law and what brought us to our current station, and as well how it's handled in adjoining jurisdictions to see how they have addressed other issues. And I enjoy that kind of predominantly solitary time, as opposed to really kind of focus on those things, as opposed to being at the district court level, where things happen at a more rapid pace and issues are kind of decided more at the superficial level. It has been a tremendous honor for me to stand before the appellate courts for the last 22 years and announce my appearance on behalf of the people of the state of Kansas. And during that time, I have worked exceedingly hard to ensure that the law is consistently, impartially applied to all Kansans. I have worked also during that time to become the best practitioner that I can be. And I feel that I have reached that point in my career where I'm ready to take that next step, that next leap, if you will, to play a more active role and a more significant role in that system that's responsible for the administration of the laws of this state. So for those reasons, it would be a remarkable honor to be able to take that next step in my career and be confirmed for the Kansas Court of Appeals.
Well, thank you for that, Ms. Isherwood, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Gossage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Isherwood, I really have no questions for you. I enjoyed meeting you personally. I read through all of your packet. You're extremely qualified, and I asked all of my questions in our private meeting, and you answered them satisfactorily. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Senator Haley.
I didn't know that you were going out. I guess I could, Senator Gossage said, I greatly appreciate the vetted process that has brought the nominee before us and have read through and found both to be pleased that they're here before us. Wish you the best, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Pyle. All right, no questions. Senator Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize I didn't have an opportunity to meet you in person and talk to you. It's been a crazy session. I guess always my biggest concern and ask is, how do you resolve any conflicts between statutes and constitutional issues? Which do you follow in resolving those issues? And that'll be my first question.
Thank you, Senator Leslie Isherwood, and understood that you have an extraordinarily busy schedule, so I regret that we were not able to meet, but I certainly understand. So in resolving issues, the starting point always has to be the Constitution and the laws as set forth by the Legislative Committee. Under the separation of powers doctrine, in my role as a judge, I am strictly limited to interpreting the laws that you all have handed forward to us. And under that same structure, you all have the sole responsibility of creating the laws that govern this state. So my judicial philosophy would be simply to apply the laws as clearly written.
And to follow up, I mean, obviously you're a person, you have certain biases and things of that nature. And how do you separate that from your strictly interpreting the law? Obviously, judicial activism is something we're very concerned with these days, and we want to keep that separation of powers between those who write the laws and those who interpret it.
Certainly, Leslie Isherwood. Certainly, all judges come to this bench from a host of different backgrounds with a variety of experiences that shape their perspectives. But I firmly believe that once you are entrusted with the responsibility of becoming an arbiter of the law, that your personal philosophies or ideologies absolutely must yield to the letter of the law. In every endeavor, it is so very important that those philosophies and ideologies not poison your analysis of the issue before you, because that is where we run into trouble. It must absolutely be the clear letter of the law.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Wilborn.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it was a pleasure to get to meet you earlier, and I appreciated your opening remarks. Having appeared before the appellate court a number of times, what particular skill that you have that you would add value to that court?
So I believe that my 22 years of appellate practice is what makes me the ideal appointee for this position. Appellate practice is about being confronted with a factual scenario, distilling it down to the true issues that the parties are attempting to hash out, conducting effective research to sleuth out the law that governs, and synthesizing both of those to arrive at the correct conclusion under the law. And that is where I excel. That is the framework that I have operated under for the last 22 years, and that is the same framework that would govern my practice before the Court of Appeals. So essentially, somewhat the way I view it is I've already been doing this job for 22 years. It's just the way I dress for it. So that's a little bit of a glib response, but it is what it is.
Thank you so much. That was very clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. We will then turn back to Senator Baumgardner for any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being with us today. Could you share with us your approach to constitutional interpretation and statutory interpretation?
Thank you, Senator Leslie Isherwood. Again, I believe that when you're looking at the plain letter of the law, I would fall under the traditionalist approach, and I would follow the long-standing law of this state that the intent of the legislature must control as evidenced by the language that's utilized in those statutory provisions.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question for that. Sometimes you hear the word originalist when talked about regarding court decisions and interpretation of the Constitution. Would you describe that as your philosophy when interpreting the Constitution as well?
Thank you, Leslie Isherwood. So an originalist is, my understanding, is that they view the Constitution as it was at the time of its passage in light of the language that was utilized at its time, as opposed to viewing the Constitution as a living document that has the capacity to change from decade to decade. And I would fall within that category.
Just to be clear what that means, are you talking about the
Originalist, yes.
Originalist, okay. Because we all hear from constituents, other Kansans, concern about legislating from the bench. What are your thoughts on that?
Leslie Isherwood, there is not a time where it's appropriate to legislate from the bench. When you have individuals that legislate from the bench, you have reached a divergence in the separation of powers. When you legislate from the bench, you're not staying in your lane, and it results in confusion in the law. Your job on the bench is to interpret the law as it's been clearly written. If you are legislating from the bench, it creates confusion as to what that law actually is, and it impacts due process to some degree. Judges don't have an idea of how they are to conduct their trials. Practitioners don't have a clear indication of how they are to conduct their trials. And most importantly, there's confusion for the citizens of this state who are presumed to know the law. If we have two bodies attempting to establish the law, there is confusion and a gray area. So it is not appropriate to legislate from the bench.
I think you've hit on an important point why legislating from the bench is a problem, because it can impact and interfere with due process, because part of due process is providing notice of what the law is, and if the law is being changed or legislated and created from the bench, then you had said the practitioners and most importantly citizens of Kansas aren't on notice of what the law is, and that's why so many of us have concerns about legislating from the bench. Committee, I have asked a few questions. We have time. We've been very efficient with our confirmation hearing this morning, so we will circle back with any other questions from senators or comments or thoughts. Seeing and hearing none, then if you would like to make a few closing remarks, we'll try to limit it to, I'm just readjusting the time here. If you would like another 5 minutes for closing remarks, that would be fine.
Thank you, Leslie Isherwood. Again, I would like to express my appreciation for the time and effort each of you have committed to this endeavor. Your words and your actions reflect a keen awareness of the magnitude of this task that's been placed before you. As one who has devoted nearly her entire career to this area of the law, I'm grateful for your diligence. No organizational structure is infallible or insulated from error. The judicial system is not immune from that reality. Because of that truth, the work that the Court of Appeals engages in is tremendously important. In many ways, it is equally as important as the inception of the case in the district court, because the reviewing court ensures that the rights of the party and the integrity of the process remain sacrosanct. An effective jurist for the Court of Appeals is one who exhibits integrity, impartiality, and an abiding respect for the laws governing the state. I firmly believe that the research, writing, and analytical skills which I have honed in the appellate courts specifically over the course of the past 2 decades place me squarely within those parameters and would be an invaluable asset to the court. If confirmed, I will do my best to consider every case free of any bias, with a commitment to principle and in accordance with the law. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you, members of the committee, for your time.
Thank you, and just wanted to give you a moment, Ms. Isherwood, if you have any family or other supporters in the committee meeting room that you would like to introduce to the committee.
I can introduce them. They don't have anything to bestow upon.
No, if it's your family, and we just want to recognize that they're here to support you.
So my husband, Boyd Isherwood, drove up early this morning in the rain for me, and likewise, my dear best friend, Jennifer Thornberry, and her husband, John, have also been here to share in this day with me.
Well, very good. Thank you all for making the effort to be here today and to participate in the confirmation hearing. It's a good thing we're not an 8:30 committee meeting, right? That it's 10:30 and not 8:30. Glad to see you all here. Did want to point out to the committee that you have proponent letters in support of the appointee from Mark Bennett, Sedgwick County District Attorney, Salvatore D. Intagliata of Monat and Spurrier, Attorneys at Law, Craig R. Knowlton, Esquire, Terry J. Malone of Williams Malone, Sean E. Minahan, Johnson County Assistant District Attorney, Trinity J. Muth, Riley County Deputy County Attorney, Jason C. Neal, Neal Firm, Spring, Texas, Kim T. Parker, former Sedgwick County Chief Deputy Attorney, Deborah S. Peterson, 18th Judicial District Attorney's Office, Thomas R. Stanton, Reno County District Attorney, Ann Swiggle, 18th Judicial District Deputy District Attorney, and Jennifer Thronberry, Girl Scout Leader. So appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. I think it's important to remember that when any judge is sworn in, just like legislators, we all take an oath to uphold the Constitution, and it's so important that we proceed thereunder. Did you have a comment, Senator? No comment. With that, then, we will close the hearing part of the confirmation of Leslie Isherwood. We're not yet going to take action on it because we want to make sure that we can hear from both of the appointees this morning and be respectful of the time of the committee. So with that, then, we will close the hearing part of the confirmation hearing for Ms. Leslie Isherwood, and we will then open the next business before the committee today is the consideration of the appointment by Governor Kelly of J.C.J. Hurst as a judge of the Kansas Court of Appeals to serve subject to retention elections as set forth in statute, succeeding the Honorable Melissa Standridge. Kansas statutes annotated at 20-3020 provides that any vacancy on the Court of Appeals is filled by appointment by the governor with the consent of the Senate. So we are here to provide and to determine what the will and the consent of the Senate is or isn't. We have about 50 minutes or so. We will use the same procedure. Ms. Isherwood had about 5.5 minutes for opening statements, so we'll be glad to hear that from you if you have one. And then we will provide for about 3 minutes of questions from each of the senators, if they so choose, in alphabetical order. You can skip over and come back to you if you'd like, and then we'll finish up with whatever time we have with finish-up questions and a closing statement of about 5 minutes from the nominee as well. So with that, we welcome you to committee. Thank you for driving in today to be with us. And you also have had the opportunity, I think, to meet with a couple or most of the committee members. We appreciate your time doing that and getting to know you there. I met with you. I also met with Ms. Isherwood ahead of today's committee meeting as well. So with that, we will turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to the members of the committee for being here today and allowing me to be here to speak with you. I also, as Ms. Isherwood said, appreciate the time that you gave to me in meeting with me and talking about my experience and the importance of the judiciary and also some of your concerns regarding the judiciary. I've also been privileged to see how busy you are and the hard work that you have been putting into the bills before you. It's been deliberative and thoughtful, and I've appreciated seeing that up close and speaking with you about that. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. I don't know if this is too loud.
It's perfect, actually. We get yelled at for not speaking directly into the mic, so you're doing great.
Okay. I'm currently a partner at ks.gov. It's a law firm of approximately 500 attorneys across the nation. I practice in regulatory healthcare law and also employment litigation. I represent small family-owned companies as well as large national corporations. My life and legal experience lends itself to qualify me to serve on the Kansas Court of Appeals. About me a little bit, my mom is from Colby, so I spent a lot of time growing up in Colby and helping my grandparents with their feed and farm supply store. Not sure how helpful we are, but we tried. Spending a lot of time with my family in Colby taught me a lot about Kansas, agricultural businesses, and also the value of hard work. My first job was detasseling corn, just right around there. I'm also blessed to have grandparents in Lawrence who have devoted their lives to service and philanthropy. They have served on boards, started the first low-income preschool in the city, and really showed me the value of service to my community. I take the lessons from all of my grandparents and put them into my life today. Neither of my parents graduated from college. My single mother struggled to make ends meet. But she was always there and willing to help others who were in more need than us. As a child, I experienced divorce, violence, homelessness, poverty early on, and those were my introductions to the law. That's where I met my first lawyers and judges. During college, I began volunteering with a domestic violence shelter in Lawrence, and I continued that for many years. I wasn't able to afford to go to law school right after college, but my legal experience as a child and my experience helping survivors of domestic violence really drove me to go back. While in law school, I was active in many organizations that helped families in need, and I continued to serve with the domestic violence shelter. I also discovered my deep love and appreciation for the law and the legal process. I was a member of the Kansas Law Review, and I had the opportunity to work for some of Kansas's most prestigious law firms. I graduated a semester early and accepted a position with Stinson, one of the largest law firms in the region, as a commercial litigator. This is where I knew that I could work in a broad area of complex legal issues with many different types of clients and also provide pro bono service. Stinson was very adamant that they wanted their attorneys to do that. As a commercial litigator, I practiced in a wide area of law. I have represented companies in product liability litigation, commercial insurance coverage, environmental law, property disputes, general contracts, employment litigation, healthcare, and many others. I've worked on large cases worth $500 million in the state of Kansas, class actions, and single plaintiff small property issues. After the birth of my third son, I was able to become general counsel of a healthcare center and combine my love of the law and working on complex legal issues with also serving families in need. So in that job, I handled all aspects of the legal issues for this healthcare company, and I was able to work directly with patients to ensure they receive the healthcare and behavioral health services they need. Now, as a partner at ks.gov, I'm able to provide those same services to healthcare companies across the entire state. I work in a heavily regulated area, and I'm able to work with administrative agencies in that. I also, because of my experience, have had the opportunity to gain expertise in all levels of litigation and appeals. Outside of my office, I volunteer extensively in my community and in the legal community. I'm an adjunct professor at Washburn Law School. I also have, for almost a decade, provided training to lawyers across the state regarding legal ethics and the rules of professional responsibility. I'm also a member of the Kansas Board of Law Examiners, which means I grade the Kansas bar exam. It's actually a little bit more fun than it might sound. And in our community, I serve as the board chair of the United Way. I'm also heavily involved in the PTO and frequently coach recreational soccer, which is more difficult than it sounds. I have discussed with many of you in our meetings why I want to be a judge on the Kansas Court of Appeals. I have a deep and abiding appreciation of the law, the rule of law, and the legal process in our country and in our state, and I want to serve Kansas. I want to use my expertise and experience and abilities to work on complex legal issues that benefit the state, and for me, this is the ultimate combination of my love of the law and my dedication to service. I'm honored to be here before you today, and I assure you that if confirmed, I would perform my duties as a judge on the Kansas Court of Appeals with integrity and equal application of the law to all who come before the court. With that, I stand for questions.
Thank you. We'll then start again alphabetically with Senator Baumgardner.
This doesn't sit there, it's working now. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being with us today. Could you discuss your views on the role of the judiciary in our government and the criticism involving judicial activism?
Thank you, Senator J.C. Hurst. I think you asked the role of the judiciary in the criticism. Sorry, our microphones are opposites, I think. Yeah. The role of for me, the separation of powers laid out by the founders of our country is vitally important. The only way we can operate without inappropriately and imprudently impacting the states of or the citizens of our state is to have appropriate separation of powers. As an attorney who has represented companies throughout our state, I rely on the judges to apply the law that is there and to not use their personal biases against my clients. So for me, the role of the judiciary is to apply the laws as they're put forth by our legislature and nothing more. And I think that particularly, well, with regard to all citizens, persons or businesses in Kansas, if you have an activist judge, you end up with bad law, and you end up with law that is not applied equally. My small business client should have the law applied to him just as my large national client.
Could you just share with us in general your judicial philosophy, just in general, and how it has changed from before you went to law school, and then after law school when you went into practice?
You know, I'm not sure I had a judicial philosophy per se before law school. I will say, as a person who has been in many...
You had a sense of what was going on in the courts? I
did. As a child going through things, and as a person working with survivors, I had a lot of opinions. And it's sort of like when you become a mom. Before becoming a mom, I had a lot of ideas about being a mom. I would never do this, I would never do that. And now, as a mother to many, I have learned that sometimes there's reason you do this and you do that. So in my practice, I appreciate judges who have a narrow focus and who exercise judicial restraint. For me, that's my philosophy. I appreciate Justice O'Connor and how she spoke about judicial restraint. It's important to look at the issue before you narrowly and decide it based on the law and not the emotions of the situation. And a lot of times my cases do involve emotions.
Madam Chair, that's all I have for questions.
Thank you. Senator Bowers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, thank you for meeting with us again. That was very important that you made the effort to catch us all. That's very important that you understand our time, but also you value our opinion as well. So thank you very much for that.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm also very, that you understand rural America. That really, and rural, that really is important to me coming from a very rural district. I appreciate your attitude towards service as well. You probably learned that a lot with your grandparents shucking corn, I would imagine too, and selling feed. I'd like to know just a little more about ethics and judiciary and what you do with that, because that sounds very intriguing.
Yeah.
Just a reminder to the committee and those at the podium, we want to make sure that we speak directly into the microphones so that those listening online can make sure they hear us. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator J.C. Hurst. Thank you, Senator Bowers, for your question. I have had the opportunity to research and prepare training for lawyers across the state regarding legal ethics. And for me, the ethics of the judiciary is of vital, utmost importance. I look forward to actually providing some additional training about that, if confirmed. It's important that all of the state understands the impartiality and integrity of the court. I would never want an attorney or an appellee or appellant coming before the court and thinking that my decision was made before they got there. That it is vitally important that we all exercise with legal and judicial integrity.
Well, thank you very much. I think it's very fascinating. It's something we haven't really heard or talked about. So thank you for doing that and for visiting with us today. Thank you,
Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Corson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here, Ms. Hurst. Can you talk about how you would view legislative intent on the Court of Appeals?
For me, in representing my clients, I have the opportunity to review a lot of statutes and regulations, and I always look to the words of those statutes and regulations. I don't look to allow my clients to do something in a hidden way, or I think maybe they might mean this. Legislative intent is so important, and with representing some of my clients, they've asked, can we do this? Can we transport these medications to a rural area to serve it? And what I have to do is look at the language and see what is there and nothing more, nothing less.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. You've spent the bulk of your career at two large corporate firms, Stenson and now at Q-Tech Rock, both of which have a large presence in Kansas and also offices in many other states. Can you just talk to us generally, obviously not, necessarily specifically, a bit about just the kind of what a big firm corporate practice looks like, the kind of clients that you're working with, generally speaking, and the kind of matters and the kind of issues that the one handles at a large corporate firm? Thank you.
Well, I think I'll first start with one of the reasons why I chose to work at Stinson is because they promised a commitment to pro bono work. So they actually gave you credit, working hours, billable time towards performing pro bono services. So I was able to do that in the area of criminal law for more than 2 years and also in family law. But in general, my clients have been companies throughout the state. I have companies who were started by one entrepreneur and his wife is the assistant. And I also represent national corporations that do have businesses all over the country. And in representing them, it is important that the law in Kansas applies equally to them. I don't want any favors for my large companies because they might know someone or that my smaller companies wouldn't get. That is across the board. I provide discrimination defense work to my companies as well, employment discrimination, and I perform all aspects of litigation for them in that regard, in ensuring that they have an appropriate defense to claims within the bounds of the law.
Thank you for those answers, Ms. Hurst, and I have no further questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Gossage.
Thank you for being here. Thank you, Madam Chair. As we discussed when we met privately,
Make sure you speak into the microphone,
I
please.
just need to get it closer to me.
And I scoot mine way up this way. There you
Yes,
go.
there we go.
Thank you.
Thank you. As we discussed when we were in the private meeting, and I found you to be lovely, and thank you so much for being there. I felt that, and then some of the questions that I asked you were regarding what I seem to find as kind of a limited experience in sort of what Senator Corson brought up, in that you have worked with large corporations, nothing wrong with that, and a lot of this has been in the health field. Again, nothing wrong with that either, and I note that you have drafted and revised health center policies and procedures, compliance issues, very important to keep people in compliance. But can you tell us how you feel that that would fit in with your position as a judge? And do you feel that there is a lack in the other areas that may be beneficial to you on the court?
J.C. Hurst. Thank you, Senator Gossage. So my resume, and as I think about the years, I think it's actually balanced more heavily toward commercial litigation. I've been practicing in healthcare regulatory law less than I have been in commercial litigation. So as a commercial litigator, I write briefs, I appeal, I write appellant briefs, I write appellee briefs, I research areas of the law. I have had to research some really nuanced areas of the law that only come up in the strangest of ways. And so my experience is really in research and writing a wide variety of law, researching, analyzing, and writing about a diverse, large variety of law. I do think that my regulatory experience is also helpful because as a judge, what you're going to be doing is looking to see if it fits within the bounds of the law. As a litigator, you're advocating, right? But as a judge, you're not. And as a regulatory attorney, you're also not advocating. You are just looking at the law and determining whether what a client wants to do, what a Kansas business wants to do to further its business, fits within the law. And that's exactly what I would be doing on the Kansas Court of Appeals.
Thank you.
Oh, sure.
Thank you. Senator Haley.
Thank you, and as in the other example, I have no questions for the conferee, for the nominee. Again, I continue to respect and appreciate the process that bring nominees and candidates before us. They come through a very heavily vetting process where practitioners and those who would know of their experiences have an opportunity to review and to recommend for consideration. And certainly want to share my congratulations to the conferee, to the nominee, Ms. Hurst, for coming through that process and to having been nominated. Certainly would work to do everything I can to assist and to support your nomination and your confirmation. Congratulations to you. Especially pleased to see the process that has brought you here and that you're here before us today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Pyle. No questions. Senator Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I regret and apologize for not being able to meet with you either before this hearing. And one question you answered earlier regarding statutory intent, would you say that, how would you interpret constitutional intent with regards to statutory intent? Which one trumps the other?
Thank you, Senator Thompson, and it's okay. I had the opportunity to see some of your calendars as your assistants were trying to squeeze me in, and I do apologize if your assistant felt that I was coming too frequently to
Oh, she's just intense.
No.
But I appreciate that. No, she does a great job.
Yeah, all of your assistants were so kind in finding time for us to meet, and I greatly appreciate that. Senator Thompson, you start with the Constitution. Every case that comes before me, that's where you start. You start with the Constitution of our state, and depending on the case, the United States, and you go from there. When you have a statute that is on point, that's what you apply. And I read them as written.
And I realize we're not supposed to ask questions that have your specific how you would rule on something. This is just kind of a general question. Madam Chair, I'll be very careful with this. You know, in the last year, we've seen things change because of this pandemic. And in my opinion, some constitutional rights have been kind of undermined in trying to address this. And I just wonder if you have any general thoughts on that issue. And I know that's very, very broad, so.
That's okay, Senator Thompson. What I do appreciate about our legal system is that when that does happen, litigants are able to bring that up. Just any citizen in this state can say, my rights have been violated, and bring that before the court. And then what's also great about this system is that should the court have a decision that is not favored by the legislature gets to make a law regarding that. And so my feeling is that it's tremendous that we have a process. You know, we're a country and a state of the rule of law, and I think that benefits our citizens in situations like this.
And just one final question. Kind of lost my train of thought there for a second because you had a great answer. It was back to, I think, follow up to Senator Gossage. Is there any area of law where you feel, you know, you've had a very extensive experience in the civil side? Is there any area that you feel like there's some deficiencies that you would need to increase your learning curve a little bit faster with regard to particularly criminal law? It sounds like you've done some pro bono work on that.
Yeah, I luckily and graciously from both firms I work at, actually, I currently have a pro bono family law case that is actually a lot more taxing than some of my other cases. So I do have criminal law experience, and as a judge on the Court of Appeals, your job is to research and analyze each specific thing brought before you, and each question will require me to research and analyze them. No questions brought before the court will I be able to just say without looking at the law. And so I think every question that comes will get that same due diligence.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Wilborn.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Lacey, excuse me, Ms. Hurst. It was a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for being here today. It's an honor to even be nominated for this position. I had some questions as it related to legislative intent, but that's been covered. I had some questions as it related to your breadth of experience in the medical healthcare field. So I'll pivot a little bit and ask you specifically, what is your experience been before the Court of Appeals?
I have had the opportunity, as you know, I represent a wide range of clients in a lot of different areas. And I have had the opportunity to brief and present multiple cases to federal and state courts of appeals. And it's been an honor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you again for being here, Ms. Hurst. That was going to be my question about what kind of appellate experience have you had? And then what you've had, probably hundreds or thousands of cases. What's been your proudest legal achievement, if you will, in a case, an outcome, your proudest legal work moment or accomplishment?
That's a really tough question, because each time you write a motion for a client and you win, you are very proud, right? And I will say, though, that even when you brief a case and you brief an appeal and you don't prevail, that doesn't mean you're not proud of the work you've done for your client, proud of the system and how it works. Sometimes when you brief those cases, you know that you're not going to prevail. I will say some of my proudest moments have been helping Kansas companies achieve what they're wanting to achieve within the law, of course. But particularly with the changes in COVID, we've had a lot of Kansas companies who've had to pivot, as Senator Wilborn said, change the way they do things, change how they process, make accommodations for testing and parking lots and things like this. And the statutes and laws didn't contemplate that, right? So helping my clients within the law accomplish those things to the benefit of the state and the citizens, those are I can't specifically talk about them, but those are some of my proudest.
Thank you. Regarding the interpretation of the Constitution and statutes, obviously, judges take an oath to uphold the Constitution, and there's some difference that we hear in philosophy of approach to the Constitution. One approach is called originalist, where it's interpreted as it was written and as the words have the meaning then I believe there's the other philosophy, if you will, of it's a living document and it changes depending on the circumstances or the culture or what's going on in society or as the law changes. What's your basic approach? Would you consider yourself an originalist or some other philosophy?
So I think an originalist textualist is what I am. To me, if the Constitution changes with every, I don't want to say fad, but with every change in our society, then we are lacking some stability. And it's more difficult for Kansans and the businesses in Kansas to rely on the law. So I interpret statutes and the Constitution as written. And that's what I have been doing for my clients throughout my career.
With that lack of stability, then we're kind of, if you're always changing the law from the bench, you're impacting due process, if you will. You don't have the notice of what the law is and what's expected what the law is and the notice you're supposed to be provided.
Absolutely. That affects individuals as well as companies, because it takes a lot of time for companies to work up a process, draw out a procedure to comply with the law. And then if you're changing it from the bench, you have now undone a lot of work. And it's not what was originally intended.
We also hear about legislating from the bench. What's your thoughts on that?
Right, so similar to that, my job is just to interpret the laws that the legislature has put forth, and those do have specific meaning. The existence of law, the non-existence of a statute, it all means something, and that's what I do. If I'm changing the law from the bench, that means that some of the small clients in Kansas are going to have different law applied than the big clients. Some of the citizens of Kansas who come before a certain judge can expect different treatment than a citizen who comes before another judge. And I believe in the equal application of law, which means that judges can't make the law.
Thank you. Committee, we do have some extra time if anyone has any follow-up questions or comments that they didn't mention before. I don't see any. So with that, then I would invite the appointee, the conferee, if you have a 5-minute closing statement, that would be fine.
Thank you all for your time. I won't take 5 minutes. I do appreciate meeting with each of you and talking with you about the wishes for the legislature and the judiciary in the future. And I do hope that I'm given that opportunity to work on the Kansas Court of Appeals and understand what the legislature is wanting with their laws and how they're wanting those applied. I have extensive experience representing clients, large, small, in all different areas of business, and as well as representing them in criminal law and family law. I believe that my experience would lend itself to benefiting the Kansas Court of Appeals. If appointed, I would work, my judicial philosophy is to apply the law to the facts and to do that as narrowly as possible, to really exercise restraint and to only answer the question that is put before the court, to not go beyond that. So I just want to thank you all for your time today, and I appreciate your time over these last weeks.
Yes, thank you. I've enjoyed our meeting beforehand, before the committee as well. And did you bring any family or friends or supporters or that you'd like to introduce to the committee? We would love to meet them.
Well, they're all squeezed in back there in one bench. I have brought my husband and our children. Iva is age 12. Leo next to her is age 7. He could wave. Leo Rowland. Elijah, sit up, baby. Elijah is age 11, and Miles is age 9.
Great, busy family. Well, thank you for, is it spring break this week, so they're off of school? Or
Some of them are on spring break and some are skipping.
Well,
But I really appreciate you allowing them to come and see this process. They have been, that's something I didn't mention, such a tremendous support during this, very understanding of mommy needing a little time and mommy being away at meetings. And so I'm just really grateful that they were able to see this.
absolutely. Well, it's meant to be open and transparent, and we're glad they could join us today. Absolutely. It's work that we take very seriously here in the Senate. What we will do then is we're going to break so the committee can then review the additional information in your packet, which is proponent written support or testimony from Mark Hendricks of Stinson, Joseph P. Mastros Simoni, Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, Professor of Law, Washburn University, Justin Nichols of Kutak Rock, and Todd W. Ruskamp of Shook, Hardy, and Bacon. So that also is in your committee folder, committee at your committee table. And want to, again, remind those following along online that the 2 appointees that were before us today are not appointees for the same spot on the Court of Appeals. They are separate considerations for two separate spots on the Court of Appeals. So the committee is taking that into consideration. That's two separate hearings, and then we will render, we will have some committee discussion after a short break and action. And the action, the possible motions for regarding the appointments, you can go ahead and have a seat, or are to move the committee, recommend the appointment favorably for confirmation by the Senate, move the committee, recommend the appointment be not confirmed by the Senate, or move the committee report the appointment to the Senate without recommendation. So the process at this point is we will stand at ease so the committee can review the packets, and then we will have discussion and action. And the action then from the committee will then be taken up by the Senate as a whole. So the process of confirmation does not end here with our committee, but we will make a motion to give to the Senate as a whole. And again, commend both of the appointees for the process so far. Like Senator Haley said, it is a very seriously vetted procedure. You've had, like you said, lots of meetings and interviews, and to get to this point. So we appreciate you being here. You're welcome to remain while we stand at ease and we can review our packets and then have some discussion. If the appointees can remain for just a few moments while we stand at ease, that would be great. Actually, committee, what I would like to do is we will have some time tomorrow for discussion and action. So what we're going to do then is, you have heard the possible motions that we will hear from committee tomorrow as we take up discussion on this. And so what I am going to do then is we are going to be adjourned and take up further action on the confirmations tomorrow. Thank you very much, committee, and those who've been following online and appearing today. We are adjourned.